have the music quiets down. I get a cue that it's time to start. So, good morning! Everybody that's here, everybody that's there at home. Look, I know you expect a shorter, fatter guy, but today you get me. Look, come on, you gotta be realistic, right? So, let's start off this meeting with some wants and needs. I know the market's changed, right? So all of a sudden your needs have changed, and your wants have definitely changed, especially your clients. So who's got some great, Roya? Great property or great needs?
I have great property that has needs. Hi everyone. Okay, so we have a new listing on in Northwest. It's Yellow Bell. It's 3,300 square feet. It's a single story. It has got a pool, a spa, 4 bedrooms, and an air purification system. Now, this was originally listed at 1.2 about 6 months ago, and obviously it was a price improvement. We're at 824. Improvement, right? We're at 820. Yeah, we're at 824, 888. So this is a steal, you guys. Send all of your people to come see it and set up a time for you guys to set up a private tour. And I have one more coming to the market in Sun City Anthem. And it's a single story. It's got 3 bedrooms. It's amazing, probably coming in at 520. So if you have some Sun City Anthem people that need a house, give us a call and we'll take care of that too. Here you go.
So I have 2 price improvements I'm excited to talk about. Biggest price reduction I've ever done. I just reduced the property $200,000. It's listed for $1,450,000. It's out in Lake Las Vegas and South Shore. We're the only property as of when I reduced it in South Shore available. 3,500 square feet, unobstructed view of the golf course. If you go up on the roof, you can see the lake. I wouldn't stay up there, but you can definitely see it. It's an amazing property, all of the bells and whistles. Check that out. And then if you're looking for that compound in Pahrump, I have a property we just reduced $125,000. It's got a 1,954 square foot house. It sits in the middle of 16.98 acres. There's a community well with 12 acres of water rights that go along with it. So, I mean, you can go out there and drink yourself some water. It's in Pahrump, and it's right off of Homestead, which is the best location right there off of the main drag that you come into town. Yep, and there's an RV park that sits on one side of the property, and the golf course is catty corner to it. So if you wanted to develop some homes and have a place to do it, it's a perfect property for it. And $869, and the house is rented right now $2,000 a month, so immediate income.
Oh, wow.
Immediate income. There you
You're
go.
upside down the payment, but
Sure. I don't need any help from you.
I have one listing. It's a little condo, 2 bedroom, owner occupied buyer only. Or what am I saying that right? Yeah, it's a FERPA. He's not quite a citizen yet, so it's got to only sell, no investors. 2 bedroom. It's on University, located like Flamingo and Durango area. It's called Fiesta, that complex, if you know it. It's really nice complex. I've done a lot of business in there. The condo itself is 890 square feet. It needs a redo. 265. Mm-hmm. It's really cute. You might get any of this.
Good morning. I have a couple of listings. I have had this house for a couple of months. They have just reduced the price again, $929, and I know that seller is motivated. It's a gorgeous house here in Summerlin in the new Stonebridge community. Has a trail on the back, and they have enclosed the covered patio as a sunroom. It has all the details that you can imagine. And it might have a street view from the front loggia or the backyard. It also has a mountain, open fence view. And then this 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, very well kept condo for $199.
$199 for a 2-bedroom condo.
Yes.
Yeah, yours is cheaper than mine.
Who else?
Good morning. I have a listing on the northwest, like way past Centennial Hospital, like 5 miles up. It's 530, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, 2-story, built in 2004. I sold them this house about 5 years ago, and they redid everything. The shower, the bathrooms, painting, everything was done, they're really cute backyard, for 530. Owner occupied. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a home up in Redlands. Beautiful, beautiful home, almost 6,000 square feet. 2.2 million, it was 2.45, and it's been reduced in the last week. Beautiful views of the city. They're right on the very top, the Peaks Lane, which is right at the top of the Redlands track right now. And beautiful views of the strip, the city. Really nice property.
Sounds nice.
Pool and everything.
Anybody else? So the questions become, is housing market crashed? Right? That's what everybody worries about. You see it on the newspapers, you see everything else. No, the housing market's not crashed. We finally come to some normalcy, and this is normal market, folks. Right? Houses selling in a week, houses selling in less than 30 days, houses selling within 3 months. Not normal, right? That's a hyper market, a market that just is not sustainable, and it wasn't sustainable. We've had it for a long time. A lot of you haven't experienced a normal market. Hell, I haven't experienced a normal market for at least 10 years, right? Because it's been completely different. So get used to this. Get used to having to, and this sounds really bad, but it's the truth. Get used to having to work for your pay, right? It's no longer, if I can just sign you up, I'm gonna make a bunch of money, right? Not gonna happen anymore. Now you gotta do a little work, you gotta do a little open houses, you gotta do the stuff that you need to do and you should be doing on any property that you get, and that's marketing it to the other agents, right? Agree? Yes. Y'all upset about it? No. Good, because holding back. Now, let's go to Janet first, and then we'll get Myra with her mortgage moment. Miss Janet.
Thank you, Tom.
My pleasure, my dear.
Okay, I just want to tell all of you that we are having a lunch and learn on Thursday, 12 to 1, 1 hour. Come eat lunch and learn about property profiles, preliminary title reports, and opening packages for title. And if you don't know how to explain this to your client, you need to be in this class because that is part of your job. And I will tell you, without revealing any deep dark secrets, that I was on a professional standards hearing panel last Thursday, and the whole situation could have been avoided if the agent had done some explanations of these things to their client instead of just going, well, here's this, here's this, here's this. Your job is to explain it. If you don't understand it, you can be sure your first-time buyer doesn't understand it. So, the other thing too is, most of you know Garth Osterling, who was with another title company for years and years and years and years, and he's now with Chicago Title, and Garth will be coming in to do the luncheon for us. All I ask is please RSVP. You can RSVP to Haley at signaturenv.com, or you can RSVP to Lois at signaturenv.com. Lunch and learn Thursday, 1 hour. Come learn something and eat while you do it.
How many people are thinking of or planning on coming? Raise your hand.
I have to see if I got my hairdresser.
Oh, look.
So let me help you out with that, folks. If you don't know how to read a prelim and understand, you're going to get your clients in some trouble with not understanding, because if you don't understand it, they're not going to understand it. Because look at all the grass is being ripped out, right? And when they do that, the water company puts a lien on there, and it's in there, but you got to understand what the heck it is, right? Most of them will just bypass and not understand that they were thinking about putting a pool in the backyard, and holy heck, they can't because someone ripped out the lawn in the back and got money for it, and now there's a lien against the property that won't allow you to put a pool there, right? So you've got to understand that. And also, CIC docs, holy heck. you gotta at least read through it yourselves so you can look for the main things, right? Especially if you have an investor who's looking to buy a property to rent, and you're selling him in an area that has limits on rentals. Who's gonna get screwed on that one? Right? Your client's gonna say, I didn't understand, and it's gonna be out of your pocketbook, and you're gonna be in front of a bunch of people trying to explain yourself.
I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to give an example because this was a big learning thing for me, and I've been a realtor for quite a few years. It's even important to pull that prelim for your seller before you even list the property or as you're listing the property. I had an instance recently where there was a tax lien from the previous owner, not from my owner, not from my seller. It was somehow, but the title company had made a mistake. Remember, Tom, I went to you about that. And, but sure enough, they covered it, because that's why they buy insurance, right? That's why we have title insurance. It was all covered, but it did put a damper on the time of listing the house. So it's really important, even when you get a listing, that you call your rep for title and get the prelim and look at it.
Yeah. And again, it's all part of the doing our job that we have to do now because the market has normalized to be able to understand and have a property that you can actually sell that's not going to have any hiccups. Because buyers nowadays have some choices, right? They're not stuck on the property that you have, right? They're able to go down the street to somebody else and buy theirs that doesn't have a lien, it doesn't have this issue, doesn't have that problem. You know, they have a choice now. So beware. Rexland, come on in. Come on in. Don't be standing out there. Look, there's plenty of seats up front.
Why are you gonna point me out? I'm gonna sit right up here and chuckle here.
Thank you. Yes.
Where do we have the information about what to bring at the resale package?
The information to get the resale package?
No, no.
Like what's important.
Where to read what is important?
Read the whole damn thing. I know it's a pain in the butt, but here's you want now you want the tips. First, you're supposed to read the whole damn thing so you can explain it to your client. Okay, that's the legalese. The next thing is call the damn HOA and say, hey, I have a client that wants to buy in this area, in this your subdivision. Is he going to be able to rent it? Are there any restrictions on it? You know, my wife's an HOA manager, so I have some insight on how nice they can be and how not nice they can be. But ask the question. Call them up and ask the question so at least you've done your due diligence and have it put somewhere that you did call them and they did give you this information and who gave it to you. Okay? All right. Anybody else any good quick questions before we call up Myra?
No.
Nope. Okay. Myra, come on up. Do your prosperity lending mortgage What's new today?
Happy Tuesday, guys. I have two quick things I wanted to share. Who remembers the tax cap stuff going on at the end of June? Everybody was rushing to the recorder's office to get that paperwork turned in. So, two things. The Clark County Treasurer started sending out the tax bill, and they're still updating all the paperwork that they got. So some of the people are getting these tax bills that still is not updated. They said, give them time, give them until October. If by October that you don't get a revised tax bill, go ahead and contact them again to get that corrected. So that's number one. Number two, with all these additional listings sitting on, we're trying to think up of ways that we can actually help you guys with your listings sitting right now. So we're coming up with an incentive. If you have a buyer interested in your listing, Prosperity Lending is going to offer a 1% lender credit that could be used towards closing costs and or rate buy down. So if you have a buyer that comes in and maybe needs a little bit of help, maybe is barely qualifying, ask them, if they're willing to give us a chance, a second opinion, whatever from their current lender, and if they close through us, that's something that we're willing to offer to them. So just something a little extra, maybe could draw a little more attention to your listings, but hopefully it helps you guys. And that's it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, let's go over real quick some of the things that I'm going to be pushing next year, and it'll take probably a couple of years, but I want you to start getting into it and in your head right now. and that is making the buyer brokerage agreement mandatory. Just like you list a seller, you need to list a buyer, right? Because here's the thinking. One, if we don't do it, then people are not going to do it, right? If we don't make it mandatory, someone's going to say, oh, you can work with me, it doesn't matter, you don't need that, the signature kind of thing. Second is as soon as it becomes mandatory, it then becomes a true cost to the buyer, which then can be transferred over to the seller to have them pay, right? So now it's a seller, and become a seller's cost or contribution to the buyer in his closing cost because it's part of their costs. Right now, it's not really that. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't, but until it's an actual cost that's on a contract, it's not really a cost. So think about that. Think about how you can use that information when you're doing a buyer brokerage agreement with a buyer and explain to them, look, if we have this here in contractual agreement that it's going to be a cost, we can ask the seller to pay for it. Now, they're going to rightfully pay for it potentially anyway in the commissions, but as the co-ops and things change, so that you're not set in your, how you make money, right? And your cost and your price of what you're worth is not going to be delegated or regulated by a co-op from a listing agent and what they're willing to give. All right, because it's going to change. There's a lot of pressure on commissions, and this is one way that you can change and be in charge of your own income once again. Make sense? Okay. So now that I've probably legalized everything, made all kinds of mistakes, let's call Tiffany. Tiffany, come on up here. Now, if you don't know who Tiffany is our state attorney who.
Get your chair.
What?
Wow.
Should lower that.
Yeah, I got it this way.
Oh,
Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome, darling.
my goodness, come on up. You just wanted to sit higher than I am, huh? So Tiffany Banks is our state attorney. She has provided me with many, many years of insight and is a wealth of knowledge. You've been CIA, Secret Service, FBI, something like that?
Yes.
Which one?
Secret Service.
Secret Service, right? So she can keep a secret. But Tiffany also does the leadership stuff at the state. She's the one that makes me look good when I'm there, does all the planning, does everything, and I just show up and sound great. And it's
Excellent food. I always order excellent food.
yes, no, egg whites and kale. Yahoo. So Tiffany's going to talk for a while about what she's seeing, what she's hearing, what she's getting on the phone line, and hopefully that will give you guys some information on what not to do, right? Because, agents screw up all the time. So, it's all yours.
Okay, so Tom and I know we're gonna go back and forth, I thought. Okay, so yes, I have been with Nevada Realtors for about 9 years this week, and I've done it all, and I've heard a million different scenarios, and even though you think that, I get brokers that have been in the industry for 25, 30 years that still are like, I don't know how to handle this exact scenario, or again, the market changes, how do I adjust with this? Agents don't know how to properly draft a contract, what they're allowed to say, what they're not allowed to say, all the questions. So I just got a call this week about a washer dryer, and I know we've talked about this a million times, but just because it came from this office, and what I'll get also is one side calls me, and like they told Vandana that I said something, and I didn't say that. I actually hadn't even spoken to the person yet. And so washer dryer, anything like that, does that have to be in the contract? Or can it just be on MLS? Who thinks that if you want The washer and dryer are included in the property. It just has to be on MLS.
Good job.
Okay, excellent job, because again, these things seem straightforward, but time and time and time again, you'll have these issues come up where you don't write it in the offer, buyer doesn't write it in the offer, and it's on MLS, so they're assuming if it's on MLS that it's included in the property, it's included, but it's not. So please be, like, oh, also lately, so many addendums or additional language that is so poorly drafted, or it's just like the agent just wants to just like have it signed, and it will not make sense. So for instance, last week I got a call about an addendum to a lease that said that the tenant had until August 1st to renew it for 6 months, and then now the landlord wanted to like basically kick them out before August 1st, and I said, well, you drafted, they have until August 1st. There wasn't even a 30-day note, 30 days before August 1st, it was tenant had until August 1st. And if you read the plain language, to me, you have to wait on the tenant until August 1st. So these types of things, be very, very cautious and careful how you draft addendums, what you write. The things are very specific. If you think you're being too specific, then you're probably doing it right. Because the more specific you are, the better that will be for your client. Unless you want to try to get out of the contract, then you hope that you're less specific. And earnest money disputes. And I know we've talked about these over the years. So I think that there is this misconception that just because the contract says if X happens or doesn't happen, that buyer is entitled to earnest money back, that it's just this automatic thing. And it is not just this, it's this automatic thing if seller signs off and buyer signs off. Otherwise, it is not automatic. Title will not look into what the contract says. They will not look into the terms and say, you're right. Without both party signatures, title won't release the funds. And so again, that's a huge important thing that we get calls on all of the time of, you know, like make your client aware of that. Just because you're signing a contract that says that, somebody has to enforce it or somebody has to agree to it.
Yeah, and, you know, there's been many issues, and I'm looking at one agent we've had an issue with.
Raise his hand.
Yes, the RPA says this stuff, right? If the buyer has such and such days to do their due diligence and all that stuff, and be able to get out of the deal, right? Sellers still have to agree, even though they've agreed in the RPA to it, because they signed off on it. Title needs both parties to reaffirm the information that's in the RPA. Now, title companies will not just willy-nilly sign off on giving money back to one party or another without both parties agreeing, because that's their job. They're the third uninterested party in the transaction and do what both parties agree to. Now, granted, we agreed to the RPA, right? But that was them. You know, buyers and sellers change their mind during the course of a contract. And title companies know that. They've gotten in deep water, deciding on one person or other, and will wait if the parties do not agree to have some kind of third party tell them, in other words, a judge or a mediator, tell them and direct them what the two parties now agree to, right? So get that in your head. It's not always clear cut. We make it sound really good. When, oh, just sign here, you have, you know, your due diligence, you'll get your money back, right? Be careful on that statement.
What about sellers putting their house back on the market?
Before what?
If there is an earnest money dispute. You guys get that?
Yeah.
You dealt with that?
You know, they want to put their house back on the market before the earnest money is all thing. I'll just go to a different title company. Be careful, right? Be careful. Now, granted, you have a better negotiating position if you represent the seller and they had a deal that went bad and they're trying to, they're hurt, right? Their feelings are hurt because the deal didn't go the way it was supposed to. But now have another deal, you need to explain to them that they are risking this good deal that they want to get into because they have a deal over here already hanging out. So they're more likely to let this deal go once you have another deal. But just be careful. Janet, you got a question or a comment?
Well, yes, I do. So I happen to know that there is a state PAG, Presidential Advisory Group, working on revising and making a state RPA. Now, in our current RPA, it says either 6 or 7 times that earnest money will be released immediately to buyer. So, is that one of the things that you can take back to your PAG is to correct that sentence and say, buyer may be entitled to refund of earnest money but not be released immediately as it now says?
Yeah, so, okay, so I'm the staff for the PAG, and this is what the discussion's been. So interestingly, we've heard that commercial doesn't, and I'm not saying this is what I heard from a practitioner that handles commercial and residential. Last week we discussed this exact issue, and they're saying that on commercial side, title will release the funds based on the contract, but on residential, they won't. And so it made us think we need to dig a little bit deeper and maybe talk to title on what exactly they would need then, or what exactly we can put in that contract that says something, or like, I guess it's a conversation that we're gonna have with title. Because I wasn't aware that in commercial deals that it's automatically released based on what the contract says.
Yeah, and when we wrote the current RPA, it was supposed to be escrow documents, that kind of stuff, and escrow was supposedly accepting it. But for some reason, probably because residential sales are a little bit more litigious than commercial deals, I don't know. They've decided to make sure that they reaffirm what was on the RPA before they release.
Well, and when you think about it, you think about, okay, like, we know what 10 days due diligence is, but then you also have the cases where due diligence is extended, or that these different contingencies are extended, so that if there's an extension and then there's an argument or a disagreement over who is in breach and why, then you see that sellers sometimes are, not only are their feelings hurt, but they feel like my property's been off the market now 20, 30 days, buyer was dragging their feet, even though they're technically still part of due diligence because we've extended due diligence by 20 days. Like, why should they get the earnest money back? And so you get that type of a feeling from a seller that it's just, even if the contract, says buyer's entitled to it, seller will feel like they've been harmed and they deserve that $5,000 or half of the money. And to me, I always say, anything you can negotiate, do, because earnest money disputes are between buyer and seller. So if it's still in your control as an agent to talk to the other side, get the deal closed, like Tom said, it's a whole lot sloppy and complicated to go to a different title company, put the house back on the market, maybe have a list pendants filed, maybe you won't, all the things. Or if you just come up with an agreement and, maybe split the earnest money or something, like whatever you can do to negotiate. And that's a lot of what your job is, because once it's out of your hands, you have, earnest money disputes are between buyer and seller. And that's that.
Questions? Yes.
So if a buyer gets into a dispute with the seller, let's say the earnest money is trapped, and then they go to another title company, the seller goes to another title company, opens escrow again, how does that play out?
So, oftentimes a house could be sold 2 times over by the time an earnest money dispute's even resolved. So you want to be sure that the underlying contract itself is canceled. And so say close of escrow date has come and gone. like there's just all these dates that have like come and gone. You haven't heard from a buyer. You have, you know, like there's no intent anymore for the parties to contract. All the dates have expired, and sellers like, I want to put my house back on the market. So you send cancellation instructions. You're obviously you're gonna have an earnest money dispute because buyer's not responsive or something, but seller can technically go put their house back on the market and sell it at a different title company. But again, you don't know, is the buyer gonna come back and file something, or some sort of claim or right to the house? So unless it's very clear, it's just a risk.
Yeah, and in our cancellation form, it's split, correct? The top part is for cancellation of the escrow, and the bottom part deals with the earnest money.
And that's newer, because this has been an issue for
Yeah.
years and years and years, and it's like, why is it one form?
Yeah, so we can cancel the escrow, right, and let them sell it to somebody else without having the earnest money agreed upon. Right, that was, I think, done within the last year or so.
And then, you know, like my job is to protect you all and to make sure that you're giving your clients the best advice. And oftentimes that advice is, I'm not an attorney, I can't give you legal advice. And to put that in writing, I always say put it in writing, because again, that's just to protect you and your file that you said to, you know, like you're a practitioner. You can give them, you know, as much as possible as you can in whatever you know as a real estate agent. But when it starts crossing the line over, can I resell my house and go to a different title company, you just want to put that in writing that, you know, like you're not an attorney, you would suggest that they consult with an attorney to know what their risks and liabilities are before putting their house back on the market with a different title company, just to cover yourself that that's what you've said. Because you don't want them coming back and saying, oh, they gave me legal advice. Because when something goes wrong, who's the first person that the
The
client?
first person to get blamed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So apart from disclosing that in writing, can we put the house back in the market?
Yes, oftentimes, yes, as long, but you have to make sure, again, to Tom's point, that escrow's been canceled, that you have no intent to contract with that party anymore. And again, there has to have been something that happens, like all, like, different contingencies haven't been met, but the parties are no longer have an intent to contract. So if you still have a buyer on the line that's like, you know, oh, I need additional time to do this, or I need additional time for a loan contingency, like there's communication, that's riskier. But if it's like clear that buyer can't get financed, they're not gonna get financed any other way, and it's just about earnest money, then yes.
Lois?
Do we need to disclose that to the new buyers? That it's in limbo,
Again, you should always disclose everything, because there's a potential for a list pendants to be filed by the prior for the EMD, right?
But
So,
that wouldn't affect a new.
if they throw a list pendants on.
Well, yeah, then it affects
Yeah, because then it would cloud the title,
Oh.
yeah.
right? So just be careful, and just notice, you know, pending cancellation of current escrow, you know, that's a great statement, whatever that means, right? What the hell does that mean? Does that mean the EMD? Does it mean just the escrow canceled escrow? You know, that's a very, very gray statement.
And inquire, like, so say you read that, and you want to know if your buyer should make an offer on that property, like, you can ask, like, what's going on with this, and the listing agent can tell you, oh, it's been canceled, it's just not even earnest money dispute.
Yeah.
Because typically, if it's just an earnest money dispute, they're not going to go through and try to seek specific performance or list pendants. It's only if there's like, there's bad blood, or it just didn't end well.
So always be nice, right? Sorry, didn't mean it to happen though. You got a question in the back still? No? Is answered? Okay. Yes.
Maybe it's very easy, but where do you cancel? How do you cancel it?
So in our cancellation agreement or cancellation form for canceling the transaction, in transaction desk or remind, there's a form. That's a cancellation form. The top part has to do with the escrow, and the bottom part has to do with the EMD. Now, you can agree to cancel the escrow and not the EMD, and dispute the EMD, and you still get away with being able to sell the property if you're a listing agent. Now, if you're a buyer's agent, you don't want to sign Jack Doodley, right? Because you're going to want to try to tie up the property. Get it? Understand that part?
If I'm a buyer's agent, I don't want to sign that. That's what you're
If the seller wants to keep the earnest money, then you don't want to sign it. Obviously, if the seller wants to release it to you, to your buyer, then you do. And we get a lot of questions about liquidated damages. And what is liquidated damages? And how do I explain that to my client? And so, liquidated damages just means that you wouldn't be able to, like, it's your earnest money in your contract, right? And do you actually get questions on that from your buyers? Because we've been getting that lately.
That must be a north thing.
Okay. And then,
Those northerners always fight.
let's see, the resale package, lots of questions on that. Can my buyer waive the resale package? And 116.4.109 says seller shall provide the resale package, they shall pay for that. I know we get a lot of questions of sellers not wanting to pay for the resale package, but it's in statute that they have to give it to the buyer. And can a buyer, does the buyer need the full 5 days? No, a buyer, if they read it, or call or inquire in a day, they don't need the full 5 days. Somebody asked the other day if the buyer and seller want to agree to extend that by 5 more days. I didn't see a problem with that if the buyer needs 10 days, but by law or statutorily, they have 5 days. Now, what if, how do you prove that, because they have 5 days from receipt. So how many of you as a best practice follow up to make sure that the buyer has received the resale package? It's one thing sending it. Do you follow up and just say, I just want to make sure that your client has it? You do?
Well, because then they have to sign off on the receipt.
The CIC receipt that we have
Good.
helps
So that's-
alleviate any questions on that part. Yes.
I have questions about the cancellation again, because the.
You trying to cancel a deal or what?
No, now that you brought it up. Buyer will not sign, no, seller will not sign the escrow release, and buyer will not sign the escrow cancellation. So actually, there's gonna be 2 documents.
If they won't sign, then your seller cannot sell the property to anybody else because he's still under contract.
And why a buyer will sign,
Well, buyer will sign if they're going to get their money back.
correct?
So that's the negotiation part between the seller and the buyer, right? What's it going to take if the buyer's in over their time limits, right? Is really the only reason why the buyer, the seller would want to keep their earnest money because they've gone past their time limits on their due diligence, right? So the buyer's at fault. And that's why the seller wants to keep it, right? And the buyer's saying, well, I'm not going to sign anything, so you can't sell your house, right? So that's where you come in to mediate and negotiate the 2 issues, right? If the agent's being a jerk, and sometimes they are, right? Then you got to bring it to somebody like me, who I can then call the broker, and the broker and I talk, and we get, the understanding, because we both understand where we're at, right? We're not emotionally involved in the transaction, right? Most agents are because they're already spent the commission, right? Most sellers are because they feel like they've been damaged, right? And the buyer's agent needs the money, or the buyer needs the money to be able to buy another home, right? So everybody wants the money. Now it's just a game of mediating between the parties to find some acceptable number that everybody agrees to and signs off on it. And it's a dance, quite honestly. And it's a dance that you may be able to do, but most of the times you have to kick it up to somebody like me or Chris or one of your brokers to have them do that dance for you, where they can pick up the phone to the other brokerage and the other broker over there and say, hey, this is the situation I have. We're not personally involved, so it's easier for us to cut that deal and talk, me talking to you, them talking to their agent, and figuring out what that number's at, because everybody has a number, Let's face it, there's a number that everybody, they may not be happy about it, and that's the best deal, when both parties aren't happy about it, but everybody has a number. Yeah.
Okay, we recently did one cancellation, so I'm not going into details on that, but since the market is turning to buyers, so what are the sellers going to ask? This is a suggestion. What are the sellers going to ask? Amount EMD, you start low. There's nothing wrong. They're asking for 10,000 EMD. You put in your contract 3,000 EMD. This deposit is very risky. If you have any disputes, it's very hard to get it. EMD.
Yeah,
Even though it's contract specifies, as we are talking about, the CIC, we got the CIC package on the day one. On the same day we cancel it. We have 5 days to cancel. Legally it is 5 days. We hide all our life, we may get it. But I may spend 100,000 to get my 10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
We decided to split it, that's the case. Okay, even though we legally get it, it's specified there.
Yeah, there's legally, and then there's reality,
There's nothing wrong.
right?
Yeah, that's why when I have these conversations, I said, I'll tell you, like I would have told you, your client's absolutely within their right to get the whole earnest money back. But then I would next follow that with, but it doesn't really matter what I think. Because if the buyer and seller can't agree and you guys can't work this out before it gets to that dispute, then you're just out of luck.
Because there's a cost to dispute an EMD, right? There's time, effort, energy that's going to go into having to do and be right, right? You can be rich or you can be right. And sometimes it's easier to be richer than righter, right? Because there's no guarantee, right? There's no guarantee that, you're going to come out with the money. You have a question in the back.
Yes, and I just kind of want to get this off my brain sometimes. When we're approaching, let's say I'm a buyer's agent and we're approaching deadlines on appraisal or loan contingencies or whatever, the date that is taken in consideration for my cancellation to be on time is the date I sent the cancellation in, or is the date that is fully executed by the seller?
I want to know what day this clock starts.
Okay, so say you have, like, the appraisal contingency, you have like 14 days, that means you have until 11:59 to cancel, and so you have to send that cancellation, but you have to make sure that cancellation's been received. And so again, is that a read receipt, is that, like you need to just make sure that it's like acceptance is not acceptance until it's delivered. Does that make sense?
Prove it's delivered. Now, we used to give away, we'd say, well, I sent the email.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I went into spam, right? Went to junk folder, whatever. So, what you're seeing is agents sending stuff over and asking for you to send an email back saying that you received it.
Yeah, but if it's like right there on the
Well, don't,
airline.
holy mackerel, do you really have to wait till 11:59?
Yeah.
No.
Come on.
And if you
don't
think,
know when it's going to be reading it.
if you think, or if you think it's getting close, you just do an addendum extending it by a day or two or something. Like the thing that frustrates me more than anything is when there's a lack or breakdown of communication between the agents. And you have great brokers here that would never let you do that. I mean, you guys, I rarely, if ever, I think, get like calls that you guys couldn't go to your broker and like ask these questions. But it's these agents that let things fall through the cracks and just don't ask for these addendums or just don't communicate. It's like you're not doing your client you're doing your client a complete disservice. So as long as you're communicating, and if you think it's going to run up until that deadline, ask for an extension.
Don't be one of those agents that's not thinking ahead, right? That's completely reactionary. Pre-plan, pre-do it, and you'll keep yourself out of trouble. Hold on, Lois, a minute.
I have a question online.
Oh, there's a question online.
If seller orders resale package for buyer number 1, then that contract is canceled. How many days can seller use that same resale package for next buyer without having to pay again for the same resale package? have to look that up.
90 days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we changed that in statute, I think, 2 sessions ago.
Yeah, 90
To
days.
90 days.
So your CIC package is good for 90 days. And then all you need to do to update it is the financials.
The
Because that's the
demand.
only thing that really changes is financials. So just know that.
The demand's 38. Is that right? The demand, I think, is 30.
I think
Yeah,
the demand's
yeah, that's
10.
escrowable below. That's their problem. That's not ours. Let's worry about the stuff that we have to worry about. Demand is escrow. They'll get it. They handle that part.
You wanna talk about solar or pool?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about solar? I mean, you know, that solar is going to save the United States and its energy. It's going to kill the housing market, but it's going to save our energy consumption. So let's talk about solar.
So I think maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago, we worked with the real estate division to get solar panels and conservation easements added to the SRPD, and we put a little check for if it's leased or owned. So I had a call last week with the buyer. Seller disclosed on the SRPD that they had solar panels, and I think they checked that they were leased. And the deal's going through, and it gets to like 2 days or 3 days before close of escrow, and buyer's agent decides to ask the listing agent for a copy of the contract or lease or whatever, and they got it, and it was one of those things, kind of like a resale package that was like a lot to read through. They didn't quite understand it. They had called somebody. They basically let the deal closed, and the buyer didn't really know like what they were getting into. So right after the deal closed, they called, and supposedly their bill was going to be like 2 or 3 times what their normal bill, electric bill would be, and they were freaking out. And so their agent called me, like, what can they do? Because they didn't have time to read the contract that was on the listing agent. And I was like, well, they definitely should have provided that sooner, but you definitely should have not just been like back and forth. You didn't know if you should, like, your client, basically the agent, I think, made a terrible, did their client a disservice, if I'll say it politely, by not telling them, like, if you assume this lease, this is what this means, and I can't explain it to you, I'm not an attorney, but you need to definitely do your homework because of this exact scenario. And the seller refused. The seller could have taken them to another property because they technically had the lease, but they refused to. And they were just going to sue them. This was going to turn into some big, terrible deal over solar panels.
So, if you're a lister, first of all, if you go to a house to list it, and you can't tell there's solar panels on there, get out of the business. Okay? Seriously, if you're not looking at the damn roof and looking up when you're looking at a house, get out of the business. Number 2, if you see solar panels, red flags should be going up because there's going to be more work for you to do. Because you're the one that's going to need to find and force the seller to get the paperwork. Nobody else can get the paperwork from the solar company except the owners of the property, okay? They're the ones that are going to you're going to rely on them to get that information. They're going to drag their feet because it's a pain in the butt, right? Until we change the way we can get that information statutorily, it's going to be it's a pain in the butt, okay? So if it's leased, you got to find out if the new seller, the new buyers, are going to be able to transfer and what their qualifications are to be able to lease that, because they got to qualify. They may screw up the whole deal because they no longer qualify for their loan with the lease payment. If it's owned and there's payments, it may or may not go against them in their loan. It depends on what lender you have, right? So an owned solar panels are great for solar panels. Leased, there's some issues.
Sometimes it can be assumed, and also you can also upload all those documents to the actual listing. It's easiest for the
person to find.
If you got them,
Yeah.
right? If you're a listing agent,
Don't list unless we have them.
right,
You have to have those documents.
you know, so you got some work to do. Where was I gonna go? I forget. Don't be the agent that lets it go on and on and on and on, because it's an issue. Sellers, and this is the thing, if you don't get me this information and we close, you, and it's a lease, you, Mr. Seller, may still be liable to make those lease payments for that person you're selling the house to. Because you haven't transferred the lease over to them, you're still on the hook. Right? So sometimes you gotta be a little honest with your folks and let them know exactly what they're in for. I hate solar. I think the way they sell it and the way they do it is completely,
Unconscionable, like you don't know what you're getting into.
yeah, no one, they're preying on the elderly. It hurts me so much. But, you know, they are, no, I won't say what they are. It's just be very, very careful and make sure you do your due diligence yourself when you see somebody that has solar panels, because it's going to be an issue whether you're a buyer's agent or whether you're a seller's agent. Okay?
It
Understood?
seems like something so simple, like so straightforward, that totally complicates a deal. Just like if your sellers are getting divorced, your buyers are getting divorced, or like these little things that pop up, they can absolutely complicate a deal.
Is there a time period that they?
Yeah, before escrow closes.
No, before they provide the.
No, that's the other thing. We have nothing statutorily regarding solar at all.
But if you're representing the buyer, that's why you have to stay on it. It's one of those things that you just don't let go to this agent's, situation 2 or 3 days before close of escrow, and then finally get the docs and like the buyer is just overwhelmed. So don't wait, like it's, as much as it's the seller's and the listing agent's job to provide, it's your job to be persistent.
Yes.
Going back to something you said about addendums, I had a deal one time, and the other agent and his client would not sign the addendum.
Mhm.
They didn't reject it, and they didn't accept it. And the thing just dragged on and on. I just didn't know what else to do.
That's when you go to your broker and have your broker call their broker and be like, what's the deal here? Because again, this is the communication piece, that this is what separates these great agents with like totally mediocre agents. Like these lazy agents that, again, you're trying to communicate, like just tell me either way. You either reject it or accept it, but it just sits there in limbo. Who is that doing a service to? Your client? Are you representing your client if you're totally ignoring an addendum? Absolutely not. It's one thing to say my client needs to think about this, my client needs a day, my client needs this, but just to ignore it. So then you go to your broker sometimes has to call another broker to say, look, do we want this deal to fall through over, we've invested 40 days, but now they won't sign an addendum?
And remember, no response is a response. You
Yeah.
put on there a date that they need to respond by. Once that date goes past, that addendum's history, right? They've responded by not signing it. Because in the years past, we would let it just hang out and hang out and hang out because no response was really a no response yet, right? And we needed a response. So no response is now a response that they're not signing once the thing goes past the date. So just, we got to do better at making sure that you communicate with the other agent. If the other agent's being a jerk and not responding to you, let one of us know, right? Because we can help bridge that communication gap, because let's face it, you're in the heat of it, they're in the heat of it. You've spent your sales commission, they've spent their sales commission, and everybody's looking to fight to get paid, right? Because that's the number one issue, right? Everybody's fighting to get the money. So you need to kick it up to us, because I don't care. I mean, I care, but I'm not, financially invested in the fact that you've already spent your money. and I'll keep you out of trouble.
Well, that's
Okay?
exactly what I did. So, I said, that's exactly what I did.
Good.
Nice.
Anything else?
No response means that
They didn't, that means no.
Means it's not signed, they haven't agreed.
They're not agreeing to it.
so.
Just like, due diligence going past and not responding, saying, I'm okay with it or not, it's already passed. There are no response is a response on anything. Right, now, because we got stuck in escrow hell on people not responding. And someone saying that, well, we need to respond.
And we're actually working, so on this PAG, we're actually working on adding in additional responses. So like the notice of required repairs, sometimes that'll just kind of sit in limbo. So we're working through on the contract, if there's gonna be, buyer gives to seller and has this many days to respond, seller has to respond within X number of days, buyer has to respond, just so that there is something that's just kind of forces the hand a little bit more than a no response. Addendums, you're just out of luck. You have to put a date and hope that you have somebody that's responsive.
Anything else?
Well,
Yeah.
I'd like to clarify the demand letter, because if it's just 30 days.
The what letter?
The demand
Oh,
letter.
You're in the resale, you're saying the demand?
Yes. Because sometimes there are two associations, or an association and a master plan, so if it's gonna just be for 30 days, especially this time that sales might take longer, you don't wanna pay for it twice.
No, but sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
So it would be better to wait until.
The escrow usually waits to the very end when they're getting all the demands, because they're not only getting the demand from the homeowner association, they're getting the demands from the trash company, Republic Services. They're getting demands from water companies, they're getting demands from the sewer, from the city, from all those things so that they can do your prorations properly for your buyer and seller. All right? And that's,
Yeah, usually you don't worry about that.
Sometimes you can order them in the same website, HOA and demand letter.
Yeah.
well, don't, here,
Wait.
let escrow do their job, don't order demands. Just the resale package is what you guys need to worry about in getting that to them statutorily. The demands for payoffs, which is what that is, needs to be done by the third interested party escrow, for their own bookkeeping and making sure that everything is split properly on the day for closing. Yes?
Another thought.
Another problem?
Another thought.
Oh, another thought.
That actually brings up, the sellers don't want to get stuck with that HOA package, right? I mean, not the seller. Yeah, the seller has to buy the HOA package. And you said now you have 90 days to
Mhm.
resell it. But in a slow market, if it takes longer than 90 days to sell your property, now you gotta pay for this HOA package again?
And that's why we've done a great job of making a limit on how much they can charge for the HOA. Right? For the resale package, was $160 at Sun City McDonald Highlands. I used to pay, back before all these limitations were there, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 to $700 for a resale package. All right, so be grateful that it's not where it used to be, and that was only good until their next meeting. And some people met every other month, some people met monthly, so it was an expense that was
So are you saying that
ridiculous.
the maximum they can charge for HOA package now is $160?
There is a maximum that they can charge.
It's $350.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if there's two HOAs,
And it adds up. It adds up.
Don't buy an HOA.
Right. But it kind of sucks. I mean, that's
Yeah, I know.
$700 and then something happens, it happens to my mind. Well,
Yeah.
because you have to provide the HOA package within the first 5 days, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, you blame me.
Well, of course, look, who else are they gonna blame? They're not blaming the HOA company, they're not blaming anybody else but you because you're their representative. So that goes with the territory, And you just have to be nice to them and explain.
Maybe an update might be proposed.
An update, like I said, all you need to update a resale package, the only thing that goes out of date in a resale package, the CCRs aren't changing,
That's what
okay? The only thing that needs to be updated are the finances if they've had a meeting and the finance package changed, or they've gotten sued, right? Because that's what's in the resale package is the lawsuits. Are there any additional lawsuits for potential assessments on the property owners?
But also, we've spent years and years and years and years and years negotiating in the interim between legislative session and during legislative session to even get the 90 days. So that was like a huge win for us 2 sessions ago, because that even to get there was like a lot of work. So we are constantly working on that kind of stuff, because if it, but again, we don't know if it's going to be an issue this session, but that stuff we look at all the time, we're constantly working on.
Because let's face it, back in the old days when they actually printed it out, there was an expense, right? Now, some have it already on the website that you download yourself.
Yeah.
What expenses there are?
Yeah, what's
Or they force you to come in and give you a thumb drive of all the paperwork, right? So, there's some issues that still need to be ironed out, but just be grateful that it's not like the old days where it was just, it's a money maker for the HOA.
Yeah.
All right? Now, it's 10:30. That's all we got, unless you guys got one other question. Yes?
What about the capital contribution? I mean, what is up with that? I mean, you gotta pay $350 for the package, another $300 for the capital contribution. I mean, really, it feels like a
We want you to invest in their community. We don't want people that don't want to invest in
We'll
their
call you
community.
to testify if that issue comes up at session. You can tell everybody how you feel. But no, you guys are very fortunate to have the brokers and support that you have. They're truly invested in you guys, your business. Like, you're very, very fortunate. I go around a ton of offices, and this is my favorite. And yes, and I love your brokers. I love your people here. So anyway, you can call the legal information line. If there's only one of us now, the number is 800-748-6999. There's only one of us, so if it takes a day to return a call or 2 days, sometimes I apologize. But we're working on that.
Yeah. So again, thanks Tiffany Banks.
Yeah, thanks you guys.
Thank you very much.
Nice
Have a
to
great
meet you.
day. Go out there and make some money.